First of all, many thanks to all the attendants that are here today with us at the webinar, A New Generation of Instruments and Tools to Monitor Buildings and Performance. I would like to thank the experts, the speakers who took part of the webinar and decided to get involved in it. And of course, we appreciate Leonardo Energy and Copper Alliance for hosting it. Let me introduce the agenda of today. The webinar is focused on the pitch of 4 European funded projects, Smart Build for EU, iBECOME, ePANACEA, and U-CERT. They will have 10 minutes each to present their projects, and it will be followed by a roundtable where different questions about the added value of monitoring buildings will be discussed. To finalize, there will be a time slot for questions from the audience. The webinar and its roundtable focus on a new generation of instruments and tools to monitor buildings' performance, and their link with the Smart Readiness Indicator, the SRI, for buildings as introduced in the European Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. Lastly, I would like to introduce the 4 speakers of today. First, Federico Garzia, which is researcher on energy efficiency for buildings at Eurac Research, representing the project Smart Build for EU. Then, Dimitrios Ntomos, project manager at Integrated Environmental Solutions and coordinator of iBECOME project. María Fernández Boneta, project manager, energy performance of buildings and districts at CENER and project coordinator of ePANACEA. And finally, Andrei Vladimir Litiu, building performance advisor at REHVA, representing U-CERT. Now I leave the floor to my colleague Federico Garzia.
Thank you, Nerea. Let me share the screen with this invitation. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Federico Garzia from the Institute of Renewable Energy of Eurac Research in Italy and partner of the project Smart Build for EU, project that I will now introduce. Let me thank you also from my side, Leonardo Energy, for hosting this interesting webinar. So let's dive into Smart Build for EU project, a project dedicated to the smart buildings community. The project is an Horizon 2020 project started back in October 2020 with a duration of 30 months. Main partners of the project are ECTP, who is the coordinator of the project. Then we have Dowell Innovation, R2M Solution, Eurac, and Vito. Then, as a support for the project, we have also ECTP's linked third parties, as you can see listed here in this slide. So, main activities and objectives of the project. We have divided the activities of the project in 4 main areas. First, the mapping and consolidation of the smart building innovation community, which we have shortened in SPEAK. The objective is to consolidate and support the innovation ecosystem around smart buildings and its value chain. And then also reference and promote key innovators and innovations in this sector. I will now go through this area briefly and then a bit more in detail in the next slides. So moving on to the second area, knowledge sharing and supporting activities of the smart building innovation community. In this case, we have set up so-called task forces, these working groups, which aims to tackle and address relevant topics in the field of smart buildings, identify synergies and break silos in order to bridge the gap, the knowledge gap in this sector. Then the area focused on contribution to the promotion, experimentation and rollout of the Smart Readiness Indicator of this European instrument. In this area of activity, we would like to, and we are developing test tools in order to support the deployment of the SRI. Finally, the research and innovation roadmap and policy recommendation. The idea of this 4th activity area is to consolidate the findings into this so-called strategic research and innovation agenda in order to feed the design of future Horizon Europe calls on smart buildings and also give recommendation to policymakers. So let's have a look more in detail of the different activities that I've listed now. Example of promotional activities. So obviously, this webinar is part of this first activity area, but we have also workshops back-to-back with larger events. And also, we are producing project and technology brochures. As you can see here in this slide, we have just released the second project brochure that you can find on our website. This brochure, these two brochures that we have released this year and the previous one, collects all the EU-funded projects and their main outcomes in order to put together what has been done, and it's running now on the topic of smart buildings. So moving on to task forces. Here, task forces are group of experts that meet during a semester and discuss different topics. We have defined 4 task forces dealing with those focuses. So the task force 1 is focused on interaction with users, task force 2, efficient building operation, the third one with the interaction with the external environment, and then cross-cutting issues. How does it work? We have these meetings where so barriers and drivers, research and gaps are discussed among experts. Then there is an open consultation, and finally, all the discussed topics and results are consolidated into a final paper, which is also available on our website. The results of these papers will feed then the research and innovation agenda roadmap. An example, we have just finished the topic B of the task forces. So for each semester, we define a topic. We just finished the second topic, and those topics, you can see them listed here in this slide. And now in May, we are launching the next topic, the topic C, which is also the last one. If you are interested in participating to these task forces, it's always possible to join and to follow the discussion, to participate. All the information are also in this case, you can find them on the website. And if you don't have time to participate directly to the task forces, you can always find the white papers produced at the end of these meetings. As it concerns the contribution to the promotion of the SRI, on that side, we are working in order to better understand the SRI function and address the lack of clarity in the marketplace about the benefits of the smart services. So in these activities, we have identified the main co-benefits indicators that are associated to smart buildings. And now we are developing so-called technology solution packages of smart technologies. And then we are assessing these technology solution packages in terms of co-benefits and SRI, trying to demonstrate the added values of implementing smart technologies in buildings. All these findings will be then used for training materials and workshops that we are organizing at national level. We are launching those workshops, which we are called national awareness trainings. For example, R2M is organizing the first national awareness workshops for France on April 1. Finally, the research and innovation roadmap. The idea, as mentioned before, is to support the European Commission and member states in gaining a better understanding of the state of play of the smart building innovation community needs, and identify and tailor key priorities for the EU support to research, innovation, and market uptake of smart buildings. And the idea, obviously, is to promote and increase the implementation of potential chances for success of the priority actions that have been defined within the project. So, having said that, I concluded the pitch of Smart Build for You project. If you want to join the Smart Building Innovation community, it's always possible. There is here the link to the registration page and always available on the project website. You can find us also on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I would be happy to take some questions at the end of this roundtable. Now I leave the floor to Dimitrios for the next presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Federico. So it's my turn now to present you iBECOME project. And let me share my screen first. Okay. Okay. I hope you can see my full screen. Hello, everyone. My name is Dimitrios Ntomos. I'm a coordinator of iBECOME project and working in IES as a project manager. And I would like to start this presentation with a few words about IES. So we're claimed to be home of the largest building physics analytics team in the world. Our main we're software developers of a physics engine that is used for building analytics, the virtual environment, and recently developers of the intelligent communities lifecycle digital twin, which can be used for monitoring and management and for predictive modeling, and can tackle uncertainties because we know that every building is unique and used by humans, and leverages the power of physics-based simulation, and recently combines with it the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. So yeah, you can find out more in the isv.com website. So now iBECOME is a Horizon 2020 funded project where 10 organizations from 4 countries in Europe, Italy, United Kingdom, Ireland, and France came together to form this project with a common goal to demonstrate a combination of novel technologies for reducing bills in a building or a facility through energy savings and demand response, while improving occupant well-being and optimizing comfort, and by leveraging the power of IoT, data analytics, and the efficient control of a building, while also enabling additional services such as electric vehicle charging optimization. So now, why are we doing this? What is the challenge? What is the problem? So as you already know, we spend a lot of time, most of our time inside buildings, where usually there is a poor indoor comfort and well-being. As you also may have heard before, more than 40% of energy and 36% of CO2 emissions are attributed to buildings. Most of the existing EU building stock is inefficient. You also see around you the revolution of Internet of Things and big data evolution, which is something we want to use in our project. And also there is a lack of intelligence and interconnectivity in the existing buildings. So for all these reasons, our concept to improve and tackle these challenges was the virtual building management system of iBECOME, which starts from the data, from monitoring data inside the building, whatever is available, or solutions that are off the shelf, like simple sensors that connect through a protocol like Wi-Fi. We're using the data with our intelligent tools, the forecasting toolbox, which is a combination of physics-based simulations and machine learning, and data analytics. And we calculate the best control of the, for example, the building heating or cooling. And we offer to the building some services, and I will be explaining this in more detail in my next slide. And all this is made possible through ICT. And in the end, we using the monitoring of the building, we offer in return both suggestions and automated building control. So now quickly, our services that we envision in iBECOME are the energy and comfort optimization, measurement and verification, demand response, fault detection, diagnosis, and predictive maintenance. That's our core services. And additionally, healthcare management, EV charging optimization, car sharing, and we hope that more services can be connected, leveraging the data that we collect inside the building. So now the minimum equipment that we need to deploy the virtual building management system in a building is these 4 components: an automation server, which is required to collect all the data, a smart thermostat, which is required to optimize heating and cooling and improve the comfort inside the building, the demand response panel required to optimize flexibility and use the demand response service, and smart sensors that required, of course, to monitor the conditions inside the building. And then our key cloud software components are the Schneider Electric's Enterprise Server, which is the hub where we collect all the data from the building. iScan and auto calibration tool are components from IS that are needed for the analysis of data and making predictions by combining physics and machine learning, and the APIs for third parties, where we say to our partners or anyone that wants to develop another service for additionally to the ones we have, that we have this API, you can connect and get all the data, process it, and return back to the building more services. So all these pieces come together, as you see in this diagram. On the left-hand side are the hardware components in the building, connected with various protocols, all to the automation server. And then on the cloud, where the enterprise server is the hub of information, and with two-way connections with the predictive toolbox and dashboards and analytics and any other service, we can offer the monitoring and control of a building. So now during iBECOME, we're still halfway in the project. This will be demonstrated, this solution, in 4 buildings, 4 different cases. On the left, we have a food processing facility and an office where we will just deploy the virtual BMS. There's no BMS installed, both are small facilities. And on the right-hand side are larger buildings with existing BMS, and where the iBECOME solution will be combined also with retrofits. And as an example for today's event is the Helix building, which is the headquarters of IES, which participates as a pilot in the project. There are already indoor environmental quality sensors installed. The building is heated by a biomass boiler and controlled by a digital thermostat. And the plan here is to install more sensors, smart thermostats, smart sockets, smart radiator valves, and deploy the iBECOME virtual BMS to control the heating, optimize electricity use by using artificial intelligence algorithms and the prediction of the physics model, as you see at the bottom left, and provide suggestions and alerts to the building users and the facility managers through dashboards. And so now we've been using the SRI calculation sheet before and after the deployment of the iBECOME solution, which is still in progress. So at the moment, the total SRI score we calculated is 15%, and the estimated that we expect after the full iBECOME solution deployed to the building would climb to 55%. And finally, my last slide is about our targets for iBECOME project and virtual BMS. So we will try to reduce the energy use and the bills in the facility by 15%, and reduce comfort complaints by 20%, and improve indoor air quality in a building by 10%, improve the SRI indicator by 10% inside the building, track, prevent, and reduce equipment and operational faults by 20%, improve the wellness and well-being by 20%, and generate revenue by the energy savings will trigger to invest in further energy conservation measures inside the building, and that will be through the innovative business models of the iBECOME project. And you see there are a lot of things in progress. Feel free to follow us and stay tuned, and to see the progress of iBECOME towards its end. That will be in 2023 in autumn. And thank you very much. And I will leave the floor to Maria.
Thank you, Dimitrios. Thank you for giving me the floor. Very interesting presentation from your side. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Well, my name is María Fernández. I am a project manager of CENER, the National Renewable Energy Center of Spain. I work for the Energy in Buildings department, and I am the project coordinator of ePANACEA project. So I'm going to give you a brief overview about the current status of the project. First of all, why ePANACEA and why ePANACEA methodology? Well, energy performance certificates have the opportunity to play an important role in achieving the environmental objectives of the European Union, no? As a useful element to support the energy transition in the building sector, motivating investment in new and existing buildings, oriented to energy efficiency, integration of renewable energy sources, and smart technologies that allow optimization of buildings' performance. However, for the EPC to reach its full potential, several current challenges need to be overcome. For instance, the gap between standard outcomes and real consumption patterns, lack of accuracy, poor user awareness related to energy efficiency, lack of convergence across the European Union, lack of protocols to inclusion of smart and novel technologies, and lack of trust in the market regarding the EPC. Then the main objective of ePANACEA is overcome these challenges by developing a holistic methodology for energy performance assessment and certification for buildings. This methodology will cover relevant technical building innovations and will be integrated in an online smart energy performance assessment platform called the CEPAP. Well, ePANACEA team. ePANACEA project consortium involves 10 organizations from 6 different European countries, from Spain, Belgium, Germany, Austria, Finland, and Greece. The project started in June 2020 and will end in May 2023. It's an innovation action. To meet the project objective, we have defined a novel concept that implies developing innovation based mainly on these 3 pillars. Pillar 1 is related to the next generation of features related to input data, covering, for instance, an improved consideration of user behavior and occupant patterns, the inclusion of smart and novel technologies such as on-site production of renewable energy and advanced energy management systems, and the use of monitoring data to increase accuracy of these models. Pillar 2 is the next generation of outcomes that includes, among others, new global and partial indicators, better understandable by end users, recommendations related to user behavior, tailored recommendations based on cost-optimal solutions for deep renovation of buildings, and a double-oriented information included in the EPC. On one side, focus on administration needs based on standardized operational conditions, but on the other side, focus on building users' needs based on actual use. Finally, the third pillar covers the next generation of tools because next generation of EPCs needs a next generation of web-based tools and their innovative capabilities. In this case, the whole ePANACEA methodology based on 3 different energy assessment methods will be integrated on the CEPAP. The methodology development as the core of the project is supported by this triple feedback loop that ensures the quality and impact, as well as the reliability, user-friendliness, and cost-effectiveness of the methodology. Each of these 3 feedback loops allow to support a specific target. For instance, workshops regarding final user needs and perception support in terms of user-friendliness, clarity of information provided, enhanced user awareness of energy efficiency, and occupant behavior patterns. Activities in the context of the 5 regional exploitation boards will support in global aspects related to overall targets of the European Union. And finally, the third feedback loop, based on the testing and demonstration board through the assessment of the case studies, will validate the methodology from a technical perspective in terms of accuracy and cost effectiveness. Well, ePANACEA methodology includes 3 energy assessment methods and a decision matrix for selection of the most suitable one for each assessment object. These methods aim to cover the needs for the next generation of energy assessment and certification at different levels. For instance, the first method, called Smart and Performance Data Driving of Building Energy Performance Assessment, is focused on the identification and exploration of the methodologies to overcome exploration of the methodology to incorporate monitoring data sources to supplement and enrich or improve the existing EPC schemes. Depending on the level of detail of this available data set, different energy decomposition approaches are proposed to process measurements covering normalization and calibration of yearly uses. The method 2, or the second method, is called Simplified Method based on monthly calculation interval. This is based on the methodology provided by the Standard 52/2016 as part of the set of standards developed under Commission mandate 480. So this approach could contribute to harmonization across the member states. Finally, the third method, advanced and automated simulation modeling based on dynamic simulations, simulation for EPC, implies the development and optimization of a procedure for using dynamic simulation and calibrated models within EPC schemes, including the cost effectiveness improvement of the whole process regarding the state of the art of this type of assessment. So, as an example, the calibration procedure that is involved in ePANACEA assessment method 3 follows this scheme. Some steps would be developed locally, while other, mainly related to the iterative calibration procedure carried out through an optimization algorithm, will be run at server level. So besides the definition of building physics from different data sources, such as design documents, commission documents, building management system, utility servers, and spot measurements, we use an optimization algorithm that implies a procedure which is executed iteratively by comparing various solutions till an optimum or a satisfactory solution is found, like this. So in this case, the optimization function would be that the sum of all errors should be 0. The errors are calculated as the normalized mean bias error and the coefficient of variation of the root mean square error for each data set with a minimum of 12 pills spanning at least 1 year. So, the use of actual building data to improve assessment accuracy, as well as the clarity of information provided to end users via the EPC, is a key aspect for ePANACEA project. In this way, besides the CEPAP, the web the web platform where the ePANACEA methodology is implemented, a CEPAP tool has been also developed as a local tool to support the assessment method 3 based on detailed building energy models for dynamic simulations. The CEPAP tool that is based on OpenStudio platform and use Energy Plus as simulation engine includes functionalities to easily add several characteristics of the assessment object, run simulation, parametric analysis, and calibration procedures. Taking advantage of the ICTs and accessibility to actual data, for example, from smart meters from homes, other proposed data tools have been also developed to allow detailed modeling of user behavior for dynamic simulations. On the other hand, a process of actual weather data is also carried out to generate compatible format files for dynamic simulations. So the integration of all these hourly data into our model gets very good pre-calibrated models that with just a few additional adjustments over the calibration variables allow to obtain calibrated models not only meeting the minimum requirements related to the optimization function and the errors, but also improving the quality of results for calibration variables. Well, besides this, tools implementing additional indicators to the EPC, such as related to the SRI, comfort, and indoor air quality, are also under development. SRI assessment is integrated on the CEPAP platform, while comfort and indoor air quality parameters have been implemented through the assessment method 3 within the CEPAP tool environment. ePANACEA is also conducting 50 workshops during the project lifetime, 3 per pilot country, focused on integration of end user perceptions, needs, and feedback. So end users' feedback get through interactive sessions in the 5 pilot countries has allowed to identify which information and how it should be provided to end users in terms of user friendliness and to improve the market trust on EPCs. ePANACEA is also managing 5 regional exploitation boards covering the whole European Union through 5 geographical regions, comprising European policymakers, certification bodies, consumer associations, professional associations, and other relevant stakeholders from the European Union. Finally, ePANACEA is going to validate its methodology through 15 real case studies, 3 per pilot country. This is in Austria, Belgium, Greece, Spain, and Finland, covering very different climatic zones and a wide range of building typologies and scenarios of data availability, including, for instance, single-family houses, apartment blocks, offices, and education buildings. Oh, sorry. For more information, I invite you to visit our project website at epanacea.eu. We also encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on our social networks in order to remain updated on recent developments. You may also choose to contact me directly via email. Thank you so much for your attention. And now I'm going to give the floor to Andrei. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria. I'll just share my screen. And going into presentation mode. Yes, now you should see it. Okay, so hello everybody. Andrei here from REHVA. I'm representing U-CERT project, the last but not least before the roundtable. It's a great pleasure to be again part of the Leonardo Energy, and which is supported by the European Copper Institute, and even more within the umbrella of the Smart Build for EU project, and with 2 sister projects, iBECOME and ePANACEA. Our project, U-CERT, the one that I'm representing today, it's similar to ePANACEA. However, it's still complementing by the fact that it's a coordination and support action. So we don't go that deep in the innovation aspects as Maria just presented. Still, we look at supporting the evolution of energy performance assessment and certification processes in Europe. And we are facilitated and empowered by one of our partner organizations, the EPB Center. That's why I'm representing REHVA today, but I also have an additional hat on at the EPB Center, which is the consultancy and services center on the set of EPB standards. I'm a building performance engineer myself. I educated myself in technical building systems, but I've been in Brussels for now almost 10 years. So I'm more in tune with the technical developments by overseeing the projects and more familiar with the EU policy developments, but that gives me better understanding. I kindly ask you to connect if we aren't already. I've seen many colleagues and friends in the participant list. Hello to all of you. And those that we haven't yet connected, I encourage you to connect to further explore synergies. To paint the bigger picture, as a civilization, we have been now for many hundreds of years looking at turning the invisible visible. And that's why I really wanted to include these quotes from Lord Kelvin to answer also the first question that we had in the banner of our today's webinar, why monitor? So it's very obvious, and we have had this in mind, and our society evolved in this direction for many for the last hundreds of years, and specifically in the last decades, because we want to improve, we want to optimize all aspects of our lives. And I think the digitalization and the digital transformation that comes with it has a big impact, and it's basically encapsulating our entire existence on this planet, to which buildings, of course, are not an exception. And now with the recent developments, buildings are in the forefront for tackling many of our ongoing challenges. I put this slide still. You have links behind all of the images on my slide deck for you to go in more depth. I will not dive in detail because time is really short. I just wanted a short recap that already the amended EPBD from 2018. I note for those of you that are not aware that the EPBD is currently undergoing revision this year. It reached the trialogue step, but already in the version of 2018, this digital side of buildings has been well established. And I have captured from U-CERT project the smartness related aspects for our exchange today. I just put a few links here about the previous technical study, which prepared the methodology. It has been improved. You can ask for it. I will share more details in the coming slides. And as REHVA, we co-chaired a topical group on the evolution of the SRI, to which you have the link here as well. So already back then in 2020, we somehow saw a pathway of how the SRI can evolve and all the added value that it can bring. And I just want to note that in the EPBD of 2018, there is also some building automation controls systems requirements included. And personally, I see this similar for energy product policy, the eco design and the energy labeling framework directives. I see this very similarly playing at building level for the smartness when it comes to building automation control systems, the requirements and the smart readiness indicator. Now, coming back to the present moment, this is the official website. I think my colleague Federico already mentioned it in the Q&A to some of you. Here you find all the most recent information on the SRI. You can also ask for the package. There is training, etc., etc. I let you dive in more details. And this is just an extract from the most recent newsletter. There is still a survey open for you to share your feedback, get involved in the SRI platform, and the Smart Build for EU is supporting from the innovation side. So they are really building a comprehensive community of all ongoing projects related to building smartness and also specifically to the SRI as a policy instrument. And there is this upcoming online event that Federico already mentioned on the 1st of April. Just use any search engine on your browser to immediately find the registration link. And I think Federico already shared that one. For those of you that are not familiar with the SRI, there has been this fact sheet prepared, 2-pager, really easy to wrap your mind around it. I just wanted to extract from it and mention that the SRI, from the U-CERT perspective, we have conducted pilot testing on all of our case studies, 15 buildings in 11 U-CERT countries. And the feedback that I received from all the colleagues as I was coordinating the process is that it's the most comprehensive assessment related to building performance, because it looks at the building, it looks at the people, and also the interaction with the energy system. And this is basically supported by the ongoing digital transformation. That's why I said this digitalization is encompassing our existence. Also for buildings, I think when you look at building smartness, this is the most cross-cutting aspect when it comes to building performance overall: energy, environmental, indoor environmental quality, costs, etc., etc. Still, there is a caveat. There is always a limit how far you need to go. And this is just a quote that I share here from Stijn Verbeke. He's the one most deeply involved in the SRI developments in the past 5 to 6 years. And we should always remember that the smartness of buildings is a means to an end. So we need to know exactly what is the scope, and then we have the technology to support that scope. And we can now, as you have seen from the presentations of Dimitrios and Maria, really measure and monitor everything and continuously improve. Coming to U-CERT, we are dealing with several aspects. I include just some of them to scratch the surface. I will not dive in detail because time is short. I will invite you to come on our website. There is a lot of resources available, and many things will come now in the coming months. So please follow us to be up to date. So we are looking at the performance assessment and certification schemes. Of course, they are ingrained in energy as the Energy Performance of Building Directive. Things, however, are evolving to a holistic perspective to capture all the other aspects, also environmental, also indoor environmental quality for the people, also the convenience and etc. and costs. We base all of our activities on the set of EPB standards, which has been developed by the European Committee of Standardization via the mandate 480 received from the European Commission. And in addition to that, we are dealing with the Smart Readiness Indicator and capturing all its added value that it brings to building performance assessment, certification, and management, the practical side of things. And our aim is to help and support this evolution of performance processes, building performance processes, so that all stakeholders have their requirements met and let's say guided in the decision making, but specifically when it comes to the final users or the end users, so the people that are taking decisions, how to behave, how to occupy the building, and how to better improve it, invest in it. And all of this is meant to strengthen the current EPBD, its implementation, transposition and implementation, and also the one that's being now revised. And EPB Center will be the main exploiting partner for all the U-CERT key exploitable results. So that will be our platform to further support in this direction. We see 3 transition paths for really achieving all of the EU Green Deal, renovation wave, and so on targets. And the way to do that is to leverage EPBD to its fullest and the set of EPB standards developed specifically to support the implementation in practical terms, to listen more to what people actually need and all the stakeholders, to be very focused and have a clear scope of everything that we do related to building performance, and to leverage all the synergies when it comes to linking policy instruments, standards, regulations, and practical activities in the market, for which the energy performance certificates are somehow an intermediary, a sort of interface, if you wish. Now, the most detail that I will go today, Specifically, what we believe in U-CERT, and this is what we have implemented and tested on our projects, and we are now currently preparing some digital tools to make the whole process more user-friendly, more meaningful, and easier to, let's say, implement, more effective also in terms of time spent. We see that having only asset rating is not enough. Of course, it's the first point, it's the starting point. However, if you really want to improve it, as I said in the beginning, you need to measure it. So measure data is very important, and we are leveraging the set of EPB standards for both calculated to assess the building performance both on calculated data and on measured data to arrive at an operational rating. And we do this in a holistic way. We don't only consider energy, we also look at indoor environmental quality and costs. And we have recently prepared also an example of how an energy performance certificate could look like, a digital one, where the information can be tailored for the different stakeholders. Of course, a building professional would have access to all the information, whereas a layperson, an occupant, or a building owner would just have the information they mostly need. However, it's a tool that's interactive. So if somebody is interested and want to learn more, they can click themselves through more details. And the SRI, how does it come into play? It's basically a triggering point. It's the instrument that basically makes this step, this transition possible, because to have operational rating, you need data, and to have data, you need hardware and software. So the SRI basically makes this side of things, this digitalization and digital transformation, it makes it visible. And it provides, let's say, an acknowledged framework to assess building smartness, which then can be used for different scopes. You can easily see from the SRI, if you want to achieve an operational rating, what exactly do you need as functionality? And you can have a sort of recipe of functions, plus other examples like monitoring indoor environmental quality to further improve and have this continuous follow-up on the performance, ongoing optimization. Again, the SRI can be leveraged. So I think these kind of recipes are something massively supporting this digital transformation of the EU building stock, because it makes something that's now invisible, it makes it visible, and it relates it to something tangible in terms of added value and co-benefits. Just for the digital tools, I just included this slide. We are now close to having ready, we entered the review phase, a digital version of the Smart Readiness Indicator. I guess it's similar to the one our colleagues in ePANACEA are doing, to make the whole experience easier and have a database behind and be easy, have an easy way of comparing buildings and diving into recommendations when it comes to these recipes that I've mentioned for specific scopes like operational rating or indoor environmental quality monitoring, etc. You have here the links behind to the Smart Build for EU Future Technologies brochure that was released last year. We are not alone. It's not just us and ePANACEA. We are a cluster of 11 projects, and the 3 additional ones will start this year. I've included here more information. I kindly invite you to follow all of us. We also act as a cluster to make it easier for you to dive in to everything that we are doing in the different 11 projects. And for the SRI, just as an example, we organized last year in the Sustainable Places an event. You have the link behind the image. And this year, I think we are going to go again. It's still something in discussion, and we will go in this direction of data-driven indicators supported by the Smart Readiness Indicator. So you can already maybe mark it in your calendars. And for U-CERT, if you are attending, or a warm invitation from REHVA side to attend, this is our 3-year World Congress that is being organized in Rotterdam this year. We will have a U-CERT workshop there where we will go in more depth on the U-CERT digital tools, and you can meet all the relevant actors involved. I kindly invite you to follow U-CERT, also REHVA and EPB Center. And as a last promotional slide for REHVA as a European Federation, you can subscribe to our Knowledge Hub, where we collate all the information from all of our ongoing projects, such as U-CERT. We have many others on the topics of building performance, because this is something that we promote and we support at REHVA, that building performance should be always met in practice, not only in theory. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the roundtable, answering questions. And of course, I kindly invite you again to connect and further explore synergies. Thank you. Back over to you, Diedert.
Okay, thanks a lot to all the speakers. I'm really impressed. These were 4 very concise presentations of very interesting projects, and all within time. We are perfectly on schedule, so thanks a lot to all the speakers. Indeed, there's now time for a round table, and thanks Nerea for putting up the questions. Maybe while Nerea is doing that, Andrei, let me keep with you for 1 more minute, because there were 2 questions in the question and answers that I'd like to address already, because it's probably overlapping with what you've been discussing in your presentation. It's an anonymous attendee who asked the question why the SRI is not only considered within the asset-based EPC, but also as a separate indicator. And then another related question, I think, is what the correlation is between SRI and energy demand. And you touched upon that already, but maybe for this one you want to elaborate a bit more.
Yes, thank you very much, Diedert. The voluntary aspect of the SRI, this is something that has happened in the past. This is how it evolved. I will give my personal note on it. So in 2018, you know, the current EPBD came into force, was published, and it's being still transposed in some countries, not entirely. And at that moment in time, this was the pathway, although in all the, let's say, impact assessment activities beforehand, the energy performance certificates seemed the best vehicle to capture this side of things. It was deemed better to introduce it as a voluntary scheme, so that member states are left with more freedom. As an engineer and being part of the U-CERT project and the cluster, of course, it makes sense to at least integrate them somehow to be part of the same package, because there is some overlap also in the assessment process. And the personal note, the reason why I believe the European Commission went this way is because there was in the previous EPBD, even earlier than 2018, and there is still now an article on a European voluntary certification scheme for non-residential buildings. And there was a lengthy process which came up to a certain point where member states said, we don't want anything in addition. We just keep the energy performance certificates. So that's my impression and personal note, that was the main reason why it's decoupled. And the link with energy demand, for the time being, the SRI is a qualitative assessment. As I mentioned, it's meant to make visible the current invisible when it comes to building smartness and all the co-benefits and added value that it brings. And this link with the energy demand side, it's rather something that comes as a next step, because having this technology basically influences the energy demand in a positive way. And this is the direction that Dimitrios presented and Maria, this data-driven approach that you monitor and measure everything. Basically, that's how you will then be able, as time passes and the SRI evolves and matures, you will link it to actual data, to something measured, and then you can see how you can improve further. Sorry, I was a bit long.
No, great. Thanks, Andrei. And I think you made the perfect bridge to the first question of the roundtable. Indeed. So we are talking about a qualitative indicator, but indeed, the question here is how would you plan to address the quantification issues, and more importantly, maybe how to implement those parameters practically speaking. And maybe Federico, if I can put you on the spot as the first speaker to elaborate on that. Thanks.
Sure. Andrei already introduced the issue related to the SRI. As Andrei said, it's a qualitative appraisal aiming at the very beginning to address other aspects, which is the awareness around smart technologies. But and obviously one of the major drawbacks pointed out also by several studies in literature is the lack of these quantitative approaches. There are already studies that developed a quantitative assessment to be coupled with the SRI in order to address specific domains of the SRI. For example, there are a couple of studies doing that for the flexibility assessment and more in detail about the load shifting potential of smart technologies. But if we want to focus on the Smart Build for You approach, what we are trying to do more in detail is to analyze through modeling and simulation activity some reference buildings in order to try to understand how the performance can be monitored and how the performances vary when a different functionality level is implemented. In this way, the idea is to give an order of magnitude of the variation of the SRI together with the building performances. One more thing, Andrei mentioned before that another way of tackle this issue will be presented in the Smart Build for You task forces. Andrei will co-chair task force 3 about so data-driven methods and quantification methods based on these approaches. So if you are interested in going deeper in this topic, I invite you to participate to this task force. Yeah.
Okay, that's a warm invitation indeed to all. Maria, I'd like to invite your comments as well on this question. Maybe before letting you the floor, just mentioning that some people were asking if the Q&As will be shared as well. Okay, we will indeed make a screen dump of all the questions so that we can share it with all the people who registered. By the way, please go to the Q&A and have a look to the answered tab, because the speakers have been very active already in answering questions. So thanks for that also to the speakers. So we already have 11 questions answered, but you have to find them behind the answered button. And meanwhile, keep putting in your questions as well, so that we can, after this roundtable, address as many as possible. Okay, sorry, Maria, over to you.
Thank you, Diedert. Okay, well, thank you for the question. I would like to go in a little bit beyond the SRI calculation and so on, and explain a little bit how we address the quantification issues in ePANACEA project. So as I mentioned in my first iteration, our project is mainly focused on the inclusion of actual building performance data into energy modeling of buildings with the aim of reducing the performance gap and increasing accuracy, reliability, and acceptance of DPCs from an end user's point of view. So we propose 3 different energy assessment methods with a different approach, a different level of complexity, and probably covering different objectives. These methods imply inverse modeling and automatic calibration techniques, as I mentioned. The use of actual building data in my view, allow not only the development of building energy models with a lower uncertainty level, it also allows to model a user behavior based on energy consumption patterns. This could be particularly interesting for end user engagement related to energy efficiency issues, since EPC assessors would be able to provide tailored recommendations based on actual building use. So a key aspect of ePANACEA methodology is the pre-process of available data that provide a good disaggregation of energy consumption per service and energy vector, which implies a better quantification of energy savings under the implementation of energy efficiency measures, as I said. Within this context, we have also explored, according to end users' interests, which additional indicators could be reported from the energy assessment conducted via a calibrated model, no? Because high quality calibrated models could contribute with additional outcomes beyond the energy performance assessment, like those related to comfort and indoor air quality, providing results, for example, in terms of comfort models with parameters such as the predicted mean load or the CO2 concentration related to the indoor air quality. So on the other hand, we can forget the original EPC objective, which is to provide to the administration and policymakers an instrument for comparison of the European Union's building stock. So ePANACEA assessment aimed to provide recommendations based on actual building use to fulfill end users' needs, but also maintaining a standardized assessment required by policymakers and national energy agencies to fulfill all objectives and needs related to the EPC. So that is our approach.
Okay, thanks a lot, Maria. Maybe Dimitrios, I want to link this roundtable question to a question that was raised by someone. I see that you already answered it in writing, but it's related to this first question about quantification. And let me try to find it again. It was a question by Andreas Hermelink, if I'm not mistaken, about how would you quantify? Yeah, it is. What does improving air quality by 10% concretely mean? I think it's a bit interlinked with this. So how would that look like?
Yes, thank you, Andreas, for that question, and Diedert for mentioning this. Yeah, it's one of our targets would be to improve the air quality inside the building, and in iBECOME project we will be comparing the conditions before and after the deployment of the iBECOME solution. And we will measure the difference. So when talking about air quality, we mean, for example, the CO2 concentration inside the building. For example, in Helix building, we installed CO2 sensors, and we measure and track the CO2 levels at all times inside the specific rooms. So our algorithms will be able to set like air quality comfort bands, and whenever there is a high, let's say, CO2 concentration inside the room, we in the iBECOME dashboard, a suggestion will pop up and say consider opening your windows because the air is not great inside your room, you know, suggestion like this. Or if there is like that's for naturally ventilated solutions. If there's a mechanical ventilation, we'll try to intervene to the air supply of the zone, of course. And also this applies to other pollutants as well. As CO2 is just an example, so this solution can be applied to any other pollutant that is required to be monitored or improved inside like a building.
Okay, thanks a lot,
Dimitrios. This covers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to have it a bit more elaborated on, because I think it's an interesting one indeed, posed by Andreas. So thanks for those great questions, and please keep entering them. We'll dive into another one for Roundtable first. And Andrei, if I can address this one to you first, how can the SRI, or maybe already does, create added value in the practical building performance assessment and management activities? You had a slide on this one in your presentation also. And if I can already also read out a question that was addressed to you, and that you can answer in one take. Why would you say that the investment in automation to achieve this higher SRI still makes sense in a zero energy building? I think in the revision it's called a zero emission building.
Emission.
Sorry, yeah, zero emission building. Yeah, zero emission building. Where not much can be saved anymore due to the very high energy performance. So is it still because of energy savings or mainly for providing more flexibility to the grid? So more details in the question there. So thanks, Andrei, for your views on that.
Yeah, thank you, Diedert. I actually zoomed in on this question, and thank you, Andreas, for having dropped it. So just to relate to my presentation, indeed, the SRI already creates added value. And the main one, I would say, is that it creates this acknowledge framework. It's like, if I give an example, ISO 9001 for quality management, it's ubiquitous and nobody made it mandatory, but all companies that are serious have it, and it's somehow like a requirement, if you wish, an unwritten one. So in a way, the SRI, I see it, even if it's voluntary, I see it having the same impact. And when it comes to actual activities, what we've seen in U-CERT, we've conducted a lot of ethnographic research activities. We've talked to people from the various positions in the value chain for building performance. And almost everybody agrees that for the time being, energy performance certificates are rather decoupled from actual practices. So those that are actually managing and following up on their building performance, be it for energy, environmental, IEQ, and so on, depending on what the owner project requirements demand for, are done as a separate process to energy performance certification process. And this is a missed, I would say, opportunity. And you could say that the same process is done in parallel when it could be linked. And I think this is here where the SRI provides this added value. And now I'm jumping to the question from Andreas, because where is it? I had it. Was it answered by somebody else?
No, sorry, I already marked it as answered orally, so you indeed would have to find it. But
now I
can
see
read
it.
Again.
I saw it. Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, the SRI supports this, let's say, smartening of the building stock, and of course, zero emission buildings will be much more performant from all points of view than those that are today. But there will still be some energy flows there, however you want to look at it. And you at least need to measure what's happening in the building to actually know that it's a zero emission building. So it's still both for energy savings and flexibility, because this is something that we in U-CERT, in ePANACEA, and in all the projects in the cluster have seen, that you cannot only deal with this big challenge for decarbonizing the building stock only with asset rating. You need to complement it and really measure what's actually happening in order, of course, to control it and improve it. I'm happy to further discuss, Andreas, also bilaterally further on.
Okay, and I'm sure that you have each other's contact details, so that won't make a problem. Thanks, Andrei. Federico, maybe you want to elaborate on that one as well. And maybe if I may, I'd like to also address a question to you by Robert Pinter, who comments that the most important smart system that is yet overlooked so far is the in-building electrical installation. An adequate infrastructure such as wiring and connectors is a prerequisite for the cost-effective implementation of smart technologies at a later stage. And then he gives some examples. Yeah, question there, would you agree that the readiness should also reflect the status and the readiness of such electrical installations?
Sure. Okay, so let me say first that, okay, Andrei already explained very well the aim of the SRI, which is not directly linked with the building performances, but the really added value is connected to the awareness that which raises this indicator. So I won't add something on that, but I would like to address the second questions about was a zero energy building, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's also important to take into account the impact categories, the other impact categories which are addressed by the SRI. Those impact categories are indeed related to energy efficiency and building flexibility, but we have also to consider comfort, health, well-being, convenience, information to occupants. So the SRI and the investment that is mentioned in the question about this smart technology needs to be also considered in this perspective. We have seen in the last 2 years in the COVID pandemic how the indoor air quality requirements are been really important to people, and we are going in a direction where we speak about comfort as a service, for example. And the aim of this RI is to raise awareness also on those sides and added values which smart technology can bring. And another thing is that these smart technologies can also play an important role in the energy performance gap, which is always something that is overlooked in my opinion. So we can certify that a building has some performances, but then we have to monitor and continuous control if these performances are really delivered by the building and by the HVAC systems. And in this sense, the technologies, the smart technologies can play really a vital role, and the SRI with them. So, and the last question about the electrical installation, I think this is really an interesting point. Until now, I didn't hear about that, and it definitely, in my opinion, needs to be considered. For the time being, the SRI does not consider those aspects. And so I'm sorry that I cannot say more about that, but it's definitely something interesting that needs to be taken into account.
Okay. So thanks to Robert to raise this indeed and to flag it. Okay, we'll take note of that. Okay, great. Let's jump to the third question in the roundtable, and then we're looking at pilot tests. And of course, maybe for many of the projects we're in the early months of testing, but okay, let's see what we can already share with the audience. Dimitrios, if I can start with you, what are some key lessons that you want to share with the audience?
Of course, our interactions with the pilot sites are still at the early stages in iBECOME project. But one key step in iBECOME, also in the early stages, is to engage with the occupants and also perform an audit of the building. So what we noticed so far is that we face situations where some buildings were closed during the pandemic, and I'll take the Helix building for example. It was not occupied for a long time, and people now started going back to the building to work, and most of them are found that they want to return to a safe and better environment. And that's also something we need to take into account. And in regards to the SRI, this is an indicator to show to the building occupants that like comparing before and the after situation of the SRI score, that you will get into a smarter building now, that you have access to more information. For example, what is the temperature in the room that you're working in, or we're also testing some applications where like employees can send us feedback about their comfort conditions, and we use that to improve the comfort inside the office. And that's these are things that show that we're going into the right direction with smart readiness of buildings. And of course, I explained that the audit of a building is very important at the early stages for us, because we since we're developing building energy models, we want to know and gather data about the building to do the energy modeling. So the SRI is a very useful indicator to let us know that we have access to some information. We're not going blind into a building. We're going to building, saying yes, there is access to some specific information. So now I hope that in the future of iBECOME we'll keep this in mind to provide feedback to the people developing the SRI or the adoption of the SRI to various countries. So we'll be in touch and involved throughout the adoption of SRI, of course.
Okay, great. And Dimitrios, I think there was a question in the question and answer that was not particularly addressed to you, but I think you're perfectly placed to address it. How would you tackle the challenge around the access to smart meter data? You were talking about access to information and the data privacy, and I think this issue of privacy is a much heard concern. What would your views be?
Yeah, very good question, and we're taking into account and spending a lot of our resource on trying to make sure that we follow all the data privacy guidelines. We always seek the consent of the people of the building, like the building representatives, the occupants, when using the data. We're following the GDPR, of course. And in IS, we're compliant with the ISO. I think it is the 27001 ISO, where we're considering cybersecurity and data management, following the latest, all the official guidelines. And we make sure that because we have two-way communication between different software components also in the cloud, we make sure that these are protected and encrypted communications, so that there's no possibility of any data breach or anything. And as a last solution would be that all the data do not leave the building. We did the cloud solution, and we place, for example, a Raspberry Pi inside the building that can do all the data processing instead of doing those in the cloud, so that we avoid all the data privacy issues and all the data stay within the building.
Okay, great. I think this addresses the concern indeed. Maria, what do you want to share about lessons learned from the pilot tests? And maybe if I can also point to a question that is now on top of the ranking, a question by Jaap Hogeling, addressed to you specifically. Given the current proposals on hourly assessment procedures in the current recast of the EPBD, it is questionable if the use of monthly approaches as referred to this ISO standard is the most appropriate. So if you can both address these questions.
Okay, first regarding lessons learned, well, in our case, it is too soon maybe to talk about lesson learned because we have not started the technical phase for testing and validation yet. However, we have already conducted 10 workshops on user perceptions, 2 per pilot country, and we have also selected the 15 case studies for conduction of this last phase of the project. So as a couple of remarks until now, first, the scenarios of data availability are quite diverse. So any methodology based on actual building data should be flexible enough to be adapted to almost any case. And secondly, regarding the end users' interest, for instance, thinking about home users, they have shown their interest or preference for splitting the EPC into that 2 versions that I previously said, one for end users and other for authorities. Improving quality of information provided to end users in terms maybe of user friendliness of the overall performance indicators and so on. Providing additional indicators on indoor air quality, comfort, and SRI. They seem interested on this type of indicators. They're interested also in making the EPC customizable, for instance, through different user profiles. and making the EPC more dynamic and provided it in the form of a digital web-based tool. So taking these points into account is relevant to getting users' engagement and motivate investments in renovations that support the energy transition in the building sector. Until now, more or less, are the lesson learned regarding this issue. Regarding the other question about if hourly or monthly or simplified energy assessment methods, I'm totally on favor to use hourly assessment methods because they provide a quality of building models that allow you to develop disaggregations, to evaluate, for example, when you have an off-site renewable energy source to evaluate self-consumption or which part of this electricity is going to the grid and so on. Of course, the thermal inertia of the building, etc. But it's true that not all member states are so familiarized with dynamic energy assessment methods for buildings. The level of implementation of EPC at member state level is quite diverse. Mm-hmm. Some of them have very simplified energy assessment methods. Others have a mix between a general assessment method based on dynamic simulation, but also they have simplified methods. Others use monthly assessment methods. So since it's more or less a policy decision, or at least a decision that each member state has to take, our approach in ePANACEA project is cover all possibilities. No, so the third assessment method, of course, cover a very detailed energy building modeling, but we would like also to cover some option for a simplified assessment based on a monthly approach that it's also recommended by the EPBD, the EPB standards. So yeah, my preference hourly calculation, of course, but we have to cover all scenarios across the European Union.
Okay, great. I see that we are 5 minutes before the closing of this session. We had a final roundtable question, but I would suggest to go first to the Q&A and have a look there. I think some of the questions maybe we can take offline because I think we can easily answer them in writing. But let me have a look to another question to address maybe live. Yeah, Samuel Thomas, very interesting. How can policymakers help here a bit more? I think besides what they already do, funding the projects that we just presented. But so can policymakers help? And if so, what is the top policy change that you would recommend at the EU level and or at member state level? If you want to have this SRI happening. I don't know, opening the floor, whoever wants to respond to this one.
I have a suggestion.
Okay, great.
At least from my side, is to implement standardized formats for data exchange. Mm-hmm. Because it's difficult, no? For example, from utility servers, from weather station servers, it's difficult to gather all this data. You need after a post-processing of this data in order to take conclusions and make them useful, no? Are helpful for your assessment. So standardized format for sure would be a good point to implement in policies, to improve our energy assessment at European level.
Okay, and Andrei, I see you want to intervene as well.
Yeah, exactly. So just to add on that, definitely. So not only for the SRI, but all the other policy instruments, I think providing a sort of coherence framework where you avoid this, let's say, overlap in terms of information being demanded. So exactly what Maria said, to have this overall standardized approach. And there, I think all these instruments like SRI, energy performance certificates, building renovation passports, digital building logbook, levels assessment, I think there are overlaps in all of them to a certain extent. And if this could be somehow made coherent, that would make the whole process more timely, cost effective, and it would also go in this direction of ongoing follow-up, that you always check what you aimed at, that it's being met in practice.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe one final question, one by Kevin O'Rourke. So that means, just mentioning to the audience, that means that the other questions that are listed, we will try to answer them in writing. I'll share them with the speakers and ask if they can just add their responses very short. I think most of the questions can be answered in 1 or 2 sentences, but maybe this one by Kevin O'Rourke, asking for thoughts and suggestions, ideally with some references regarding the augmentations. My screen jumped. Okay, augmentation and application of the measures to commercial buildings, and indeed here where the occupancy can be distributed between different tenants and different uses. So indeed adding this complexity of different tenants. Who wants to jump in here? Maybe Dimitrios, if you feel comfortable sharing your thoughts.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the question again to read it one.
It is the third last question. How do you say that? So it's scrolling down until you.
I don't know if anyone else have any thoughts. Feel free to take that one.
No. Okay, so no problem. Then we can see if we can answer that later on. Then let me then jump to Andrei. There was one question directed to the U-CERT, but you probably already answered that in writing as well because it disappeared. Okay. I guess we can close here. It's 12:30, so indeed let's just we've consumed the time. Maybe just to close this session, a short wrap up. So first of all, thanks to all the speakers for your clear presentations and very great answers to the questions. I think we had a great exchange. I remember from this that indeed digitalization and the future of energy building performance are really intertwined, and I think there's a lot still to do. SRI is a living indicator, as has been discussed by many, and I think it's in full evolution, and all stakeholders will and have to team up, I guess, to make this happen. If I can just ask the 4 speakers what their main key takeaway of today's session would be, and then with that we can close the session, I guess. Just in order of how you appear on my screen, Andrei, if I can start with you.
Yes, I would say that the technology is there. The policy is starting to support that more and more. I think it's just a question of going farther together, like we are doing in the next generation EPC cluster. And as you also said, we need to join forces to make this as meaningful as possible, because unfortunately, I think we are in a scenario that we only have one shot. We need to get it right now and not learn again from our mistakes.
Thank you. Federico.
Yeah, so as we can see, there is a lot of interest around the topic, many projects. Here we have some representative of them, but there are many more, and which means that we are learning a lot from from the topic. And I think that one of the most interesting thing will be to put together this knowledge and to take advantages of all the testing phases that are now being launched at national level in order to really better understand these technologies and experience the benefits of them.
Thanks a lot, Federico. Maria.
Okay, thank you all of you for this very good discussion and presentations. I would like just to remark that it is very important to use of data to improve our models, reduce the performance gap between standard and actual use of buildings, and increase accuracy of our building energy models, with the aim to engage end users to motivate investment, renovation of buildings, and support the energy transition through the building sector. So energy efficiency, renewable energy sources on site, and of course, building automation and control system and smart technologies to optimize the performance of our buildings in the European Union. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. And Dimitrios.
Yes, thank you. I think we have the opportunity, like our generation, to leverage all this technology that we have for good purpose. And yeah, buildings are very important, as I noted in my presentation. So we can use all that technology for our benefit. We can make our buildings consume less energy and make them more friendly, more comfortable. And of course, for the SRI, I think while using it, I was thinking that it can certainly be more quantified, be categorized, like to know like what each percentage means. It can be linked to real life issues, like comfort, for example. And also, it seems that the technology is running ahead and it needs to catch up. For example, I present to you today that we're using accurate calibrated models to make predictions about the comfort in a building. So that can be captured by a metric like the SRI, that there is a technology that is using like an advanced solution to improve the conditions inside the building. And of course, I personally support the SRI, and I believe that it can be applied at the national level in the EU countries.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dimitrios. And with these words, I think we can close the session. Thank you all for your attention. Indeed, to the people in the audience for your great questions. Thanks to the speakers again. Also, thank you, Nerea. You didn't appear on screen, but you were very supportive in this webinar. And indeed, as you see the logos of the 4 projects and the links to their websites, also a warm invitation to engage with them via the website, via the social media channels, so that we can keep in contact. And you will all receive the links to the recording and to the presentation, and also a log of the questions and answers. So have a nice continuation of your day all, and goodbye.